Wild and scenic rivers are designated for their outstanding recreational, natural, and cultural values. They flow freely, and in general, they're considered the crown jewels of our nation's rivers. And as you can see in these photos here, they're really beautiful. Beautiful scenic rivers that folks tend to flock to. All of these photos were taken in the Pacific Northwest by volunteers for the Adventure Scientists Wild and Scenic Rivers Project. Despite the vision for the Wild and Scenic River system, about 80% of the river miles in the system don't meet water quality standards currently, or they have little or no water quality information. So if you look at this pie chart here, you'll see that about 44% of the river's miles in the system are impaired, which means they have an impairment like a temperature impairment, bacterial impairment, et cetera. About 6% have an unknown water quality status, which means that they have been assessed or there's some data available, but not enough to know what the water quality status is. Only about 18% have a good water quality status, and about 33% have an unassessed water quality status, which means there's no known data about water quality for the river. So in general, this is a huge gap in our knowledge. And these data are needed by the federal and state land management agencies so that they can better manage and also restore the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of these rivers. And they need this information so that they can meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act and also figure out where to direct limited resources and just in general prioritize where to do remediation and where to put their efforts. So this pie chart and these data came from a 2018 report from the Wild and Scenic River Interagency Coordinating Council. And it was a major call to action. It really highlights the need for more monitoring data within this system. The Wild and Scenic River system is already really uniquely collaborative. Wild and Scenic Rivers are managed by U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the National Park Service. So these rivers are coordinated, and the efforts to manage them are coordinated across 3 agencies and 2 departments, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of the Interior. And to address this critical data gap that I mentioned, Adventure Scientists has joined as a data collection partner. So now we've got 3 agencies across 2 departments and an NGO partner that does citizen science research or community science research. And we're also cooperating with 40 state water quality agencies. So this is a really unique collaboration. And together, it's been possible to start conducting a nationwide comprehensive assessment of water quality in the National Wild and Scenic River system. So this is a really exciting test case for collaboration. We're working together across a really multidisciplinary team to address a really tough environmental issue. And collaborative efforts like these will become more important as initiatives like the 30 by 30 initiative and others move forward, and more rivers particularly are designated for the Wild and Scenic River system. There will be more opportunities to do wide scale, broad scale collaborative work on rivers. I want to give a little bit of background about Adventure Scientists before I dive into the Wild and Scenic Rivers project. Great. So we've described Adventure Scientists as a global matchmaker. So we pair adventurers who have solid outdoor skills and can collect data in really difficult environments with researchers who need the data collected in those areas. So we start this process by partnering with scientists who need data collected in areas where they're difficult to obtain. We co-design protocols with our scientific partners, and in general, we work really closely together to plan and implement the study. We then recruit volunteers, and these are typically outdoorsmen and outdoorswomen who have specialized skills and can work in these really tough environments and can get themselves out to the backcountry to collect data in areas where they aren't typically collected or they're difficult to collect in general. We train these volunteers with complex and rigorous protocols for data collection in the field, and we engage with volunteers consistently throughout the year. We do this with a lot of volunteers. So for example, between 2015 and 2021, over 3,000 volunteers collected data for our projects across 6 of Adventure Scientists projects. And we've learned a lot of lessons. So I want to share what we've learned. About managing successful partnerships, about conducting successful research with the citizen scientist model, and also about supporting volunteers in general. Okay, so I want to talk about our collaboration quickly and our best practices for working within these diverse partnerships. The first step that we think about is assessing the readiness of the project and the partnership. So what this means is making sure you have the right people in the partnership, the right number of people, making sure they have the right skills, enough bandwidth, and that it's the right time to start the project. Making sure that we have enough resources, and importantly, the right technology to collect and share the data, and also to communicate and coordinate the collaboration. Next step is to generate shared mission and goals. And this is an important step to actually set this out and make sure everyone's on the same page. And we do this at the team development stage, so early on. We talk about what problem we're working on together and establish boundaries. What are we not working on? How far are we willing to go into this question, et cetera. Next, we formalize leadership and identify who will lead and manage the project and the group, and identify somebody who's a good person who's good with people and processes in terms of leadership. We discuss and formalize the structure and the leadership approach, and that includes the strategies and systems that we need to have for preventing and managing conflicts. So a good leader in this context is someone who creates a welcoming and inclusive environment and creates that sense of psychological safety, which leads to more ideas and better work. Okay, and then we get into planning the research. So at this stage, we work together to make sure we get a lot of diverse perspectives out of our multidisciplinary team to come up with the best possible ideas and the best approaches and ways forward for designing the study. Okay, next we allocate resources. So we carefully plan a budget while also including some flexibility, assuming that some details of the project may change and some details of the partnership might change as well. Okay, so this map shows the entire Wild and Scenic River system. The unassessed rivers are in red, the unknown rivers are in sort of orangish yellow, impaired rivers are in black, and good rivers are in green. Our goal for this project that we set out in the initial stages of our project planning and our partnership formation is to assess the unknown and unassessed rivers and some priority impaired rivers throughout the system. We're assessing rivers at sites that are spaced 13 miles apart along the river, and we're surveying each site twice across the 4 years of the study. So all in all, that makes for 1,277, so around 1,300 surveys that we need to conduct at these different sites. We started our collaborative work on the Wild and Scenic Rivers project in 2018. And we started with a really careful and rigorous design and feasibility stage of the project. So that careful planning that I mentioned with regard to forming a partnership. From then we moved on to building the project. And a lot of that work involved maintaining and building relationships with local field offices for the folks whose land we were planning to work on, and also state agencies who will be using the data at the end after it's collected. Okay, so next what we did was we really honed in into how to do this work with community scientist volunteers. So I want to share a few lessons that we've learned through doing, at this point, hundreds of projects with community science volunteers. First step comes from that last slide of when you're forming that partnership and really thinking through what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, what you're not going to do. That flows over to this part as well. In order to have a really good citizen science project, you need clear and focused research goals that are also appropriate for a citizen scientist model. And you need a really carefully and systematically designed study. Okay, next step is to build a team to manage the project. So a successful citizen science project in general requires a management team that comprises a lot of different disciplines. So for adventure scientists, we're organized like a consulting team. We have a core group of about 5 staff who manage our project. And for each project, we also add consultants and contractors to sort of fill out the team and make sure we have the skills needed. So each staff member owns various aspects of the project and volunteer management. And a general rule of thumb that is in the literature, this was a paper, a 2009 paper from Rick Bonney about how to do a good citizen science project. You need a scientist, an educator, a technologist, and an evaluator on your team. Okay, so the next step in our process is to pre-screen and recruit our volunteers and then rigorously train them. And we need to make sure we have volunteers available in the area that we're planning to work. One of the reasons our projects are successful is because we create these rigorous, fun, and also engaging online trainings. I mentioned that having an educator on your team is really crucial. We have somebody on our team who is skilled in instructional design and can look out for how to best design training to be engaging and so that the volunteers retain the information. So the volunteers are tested on protocols and project background before deployment, and they need to pass all tests with a 100% score. We also provide field methods booklets so that they have what they need to reference in the field, and volunteers need to take a refresher course every six months. We also provide support for volunteers throughout the entire process of them volunteering. So this is through monthly newsletters, through webinars, occasionally through in-person trainings as well, and through our learning management system that has a really broad and supportive community where we engage directly with volunteers and volunteers also engage directly with one another. We also run contests with prizes and do other engagement activities like that, including in-person parties and stuff like that when it's safe with COVID. And we also have quality control backstops worked into every point in this process to make sure that we are using statistically informed information to flag data that are coming in that aren't fitting with what we expect, et cetera. We do a lot of data cleaning, and we're careful to make sure that we have a process that'll catch any problems. And this is just a good best practice with any large data set, especially data sets collected with volunteers from the community. Okay, so we started the project in terms of getting volunteers in the field in March 2020. So the pandemic hit the US soon after we started having volunteers go out in the field. So we paused the project to make sure our volunteers could collect data safely, and we could set up protocols, et cetera, for COVID safety. And we began data collection on the Wild and Scenic Rivers project in earnest in summer of 2020. And we continue collecting data through fall and winter. So I'm gonna go over our process quickly using Wild and Scenic Rivers as a case study. So like I said, volunteers are screened and accepted, and then they start this rigorous training that's also interactive. They then plan their expedition. So they will do 3 expeditions or 3 trips out to collect data in each of 2 5-month field seasons throughout a single year. So they receive their gear and then they get out into the field. So next I want to share a little bit more from the volunteer perspective. So here's a video that was submitted by Tricia Ulrich with her data collection partner, and they're out on the Sauk River collecting water quality data with field probes and also collecting grab samples from the river. Here's a photo of Tricia collecting a grab sample on a separate expedition on Illibot Creek. So I want to tell you a little bit more about Tricia. She was accepted to the project in February 2020, and she went on several expeditions throughout the year, the Sauk, the Illibot, and she also won one of our contests and won a pack raft that will allow her to take her dream trip, which is a 26-mile class 4+ trip down Oregon's Chetco River. I also want to walk you through the volunteer process by telling Libby Toby's story. So this is a map of her trip. Libby is a raft guide, and she collected data during this 100-mile raft trip on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River in Idaho. Her group collected 7 water quality surveys along the way. You can see those pink vials are spots where she collected survey data. So she stopped every 13 miles with her team, and they collected a water sample or a grab sample to be sent to the lab for analysis during the final survey. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if we zoom in on the first pink vial, this is the first data collection site. And this was at mile 22. So they stopped here. And Libby collected data with the field probes and collected data on pH, dissolved oxygen, temperature, conductivity, salinity, and total dissolved solids using 2 separate probes. At the very end of their trip at mile 90, they set up camp. They took another field probe reading, and they collected a water sample from the river, a grab sample. And they kept it cool overnight on ice until they were able to ship the cooler to our partner lab at the Rocky Mountain Research Station the next day. So if we go back a bit, you can see that they stopped and collected samples every 13 miles and then a grab sample at the very end. This is a pretty typical process for collecting data. Great. So if we look at the Well and Scenic River system and focus on the lower 48, we can take a quick glance at where we've collected data in the first year of the project. So the data pop up mostly in the Pacific Northwest, and we prioritize collecting data there in terms of limited resources, obtaining permits and permission, and sending limited gear to volunteers in the Pacific Northwest to do a sort of pilot study to see how things are going to run that first year. So as you can imagine, there's an adventure behind each of these little probe data points. And it's really exciting to see all these pop up and to hear these stories coming in. So since then, we've uploaded the data into the EPA's water quality portal. And this is a portal that state and local agencies and NGOs query on a regular basis so that they can use the data. So we've conducted at least one water quality survey on 49 of the about 200 rivers that we'll survey by the end of the 4-year study. So we've gotten about a quarter of these rivers with at least one survey. We're also well on our way to reaching our broader goal of 1,277 total surveys and could have completed 244 this year, despite delays related to the pandemic. Okay, so another thing that's important to talk about in what's worked, what are best practices, is reflection. So it's important to do assessment, evaluation, reflection in the 3 areas that I talked about: assess the partnership, assess the project and the research goals, and assess the volunteer experience. So this is a process of evaluating and iterating. So to do this with a partnership, we conduct anonymous feedback or solicit anonymous feedback from all of the members of the partnership. We ask them about team structure, processes, and about the work and whether or not anything should be changed with the details of the project. This helps the team improve and evolve and allows an opportunity for the whole team and individuals on the team to pursue any training that's needed to build competencies. It's also important to reflect on the project. Have the goals or the needs changed? Has the world changed, et cetera? And importantly, we survey all of our volunteers. We get anonymous feedback from every volunteer, we attempt to at least, who collects data for the project. We evaluate our progress towards all of our volunteer management goals. We work through a theory of change to set up what we want our volunteers' experience to be, what we want their outcomes to be. And we check back with these surveys to make sure that we're reaching our intended outcomes. So I'm going to end with a call to action. We'd love for you and the folks in your network to become a part of the project. So I want to welcome questions and also share contact information for me and Steve in case you want to reach out after the presentation.